Lesson 7.4, Hyperbolas. A hyperbola is the set of all points in a plane where the difference of the distances from two sets points, the foci, is constant. For the ellipse, the distances were added together and that was constant. For hyperbolas, the difference is constant, so we subtract the distances. So in our picture, d1 minus d2 is constant for any point along the blue hyperbola. So for a horizontal hyperbola, the center is HK. Instead of the major axis and minor axis, we now have a transverse axis, which is 2A. Though from the center to a vertex is A. The conjugate axis, length is 2B, so the center to the covertex is B. And the center to the focus is still C. So those are the same as in ellipses, only the name is transverse and conjugate instead of major and minor. The other difference is C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Our vertices, covertices, and foci are the same as they were for ellipses. And the equation is even similar. The only difference is for hyperbola, we're subtracting instead of adding like we were for ellipses. So you notice in the picture there are diagonal asymptotes. Those diagonal asymptotes have equations y equals k plus or minus b over a times x minus h. For a vertical hyperbola, it's pretty much the same thing. This time, though, the y comes first and not the x in the equation. So in our equation, when x comes first, it is horizontal. When y comes first, it is vertical, and that is determined by the subtracting. And for the asymptotes, the a and the b have been flipped. The eccentricity of a hyperbola is still c divided by a, but for a hyperbola it is greater than 1. And the bigger the e, the more linear the branches. Remember, for an ellipse, e was between 0 and 1. And if you're curious, when e equals 1, it's a parabola. Let's find the center, vertices, and asymptotes and foci of the hyperbola given there. Well, for the equation of a hyperbola, it needs to equal 1. So we'll divide by the 36. Divide everything by the 36. And so that gives you y squared over 9 minus x squared over 4 equals 1. So since the y comes first, we know that it is vertical. The a squared always comes first in a hyperbola. So from comparing here, we can see that k is 0 and h is 0. We can see that the a squared is 9, so a is 3. We can see the b squared is 4, so b is 2. I think that's most all we need to find c. C squared is a squared plus b squared. A squared was 9, b squared was 4. So c is the square root of 13. Looking for the center, which is hk, so that would be 0, 0. And then we want the vertices. The vertices were h, k plus and minus a. So that would be 0, 0 plus and minus 3, or 0, comma, plus and minus 3. So that's 0, 3, and 0, negative 3. The asymptotes are in the form y equals k plus or minus a over b x minus h. It'll be 0 plus or minus 3 over 2 x minus 0, or y equals plus and minus 3 over 2x. And lastly, we want the foci, which were in the form h k plus and minus c, or 0, 0 plus and minus the square root of 13. Should be 0 plus and minus the square root of 13. So it'd be 0, 13, and 0, negative 13, square root of 13. So let's find the standard form of the hyperbola centered at 1, 2. So we can go ahead and graph that. With transverse axis length 10. So the transverse axis length was 2a. Therefore, a must be 5. And foci at negative 5, 2, and 7, 2. So we can put that in the graph. The transverse axis goes through the center and the foci. Therefore, I know that this is horizontal. And I know a is 5. So I could actually graph, I could go from c over 5 and put a vertex. Like such. And so that is the A. From the focus to the center is C. So I know C is 6. So I could find B. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So 6 squared is 5 squared plus B squared. So I get 11 for B squared. So B would be the square root of 11. Since it's horizontal, the x comes first, so it's x minus h squared over a squared minus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. All right, what's h? The center is hk, therefore h is 1. A squared is 25. K is 2. B squared is 11. Equals 1. Let's finish graphing this. So we have the vertices, the foci. Let's get the covertices. So if b is the square root of 11, the square root of 11 is about 3.32. So from C, I'm going to go up 3.32. That's a covertex. And I'm going to go down 3.32. And that's another covertex. Now the thing we do here is we actually draw a box. So we're going to draw a rectangle that goes through the vertices and the covertices. So draw a box through the vertices and covertices. And then we're going to draw the asymptotes. The asymptotes go through the corners of the box through the center. So from the corner of the box through the center. And so now when we graph it, it's going to come near the asymptote, hit the vertex, and then bend out near the other asymptote. Come in near the asymptote, hit the vertex, bend out near the other asymptote. And that's a sketch of the hyperbola. Sketch the graph of this hyperbola. How do I know it's a hyperbola? Because we're subtracting. But it looks like we're going to have to complete the square in both the x and the y. So collect the x's together. Collect the y's together. And let's move the 72 to the other side. To complete the square, it has to be only 1x squared, so let's factor out the 4 from the x's. And let's factor out the 9. Now this is a negative 9 I'm factoring out from the y's. So this will become plus 8y. Then let's complete the square. So I'm going to add half of the middle term squared. Half of the middle term squared. Do that to both sides. But there are 4 times the x's. Therefore, the negative 6 over 2 squared needs to be added 4 times. And there's negative 9 times the y's. So this 8 over 2 squared needs to be multiplied by negative 9. All right, then factor. We have the x minus 6 over 2 is 3 squared. Then we have the y plus a over 2 is 4 squared. On the right-hand side, let's put it in the calculator, get negative 36. We need this equal 1, so let's divide by the negative 36. Divide everything by the negative 36 and end up with negative x minus 3 squared over 9. This becomes plus, because negative over negative is plus, over 4. Well, to put it into standard, the positive should go first. So the y is going to go first, and the x's will go second. Therefore, we know that this is, since the y comes first, it is vertical. We know the center is HK. In this case, h goes with the x, so it's 3, negative 4. The a squared comes first, so a squared is 4, therefore a is 2. The b squared is 9, therefore the b is 3. A does not have to be larger than b anymore. So we need that information to make our graph. So start by plotting the center at 3, negative 4. It's vertical, so I'm going to go up the distance a, which was 2, to get the vertex, and then sideways the distance b. So that was a, this distance is b to get the covertex. After you have the vertices and the covertices, draw a rectangular box with the vertices and covertices as the center of each side. Then you draw the asymptotes that go through the center and the corners of the boxes. And then you draw the hyperbolas. So start near an asymptote, curve and go through the vertex. Make sure you remember if it's vertical or horizontal. Vertical in this case, it will open up and down. And that's your graph. There is one generic, general form of all conics. ax squared plus cy squared. Wait, what happened to the b? Don't worry, that's next lesson. So it's ax squared plus cy squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0. It's a circle if a equals c. That's including the positives or negatives. A parabola if a times c equals 0. Therefore, either the a or the c is 0, and we have only one thing that's squared. It's an ellipse if a times c is greater than 0, and it's a hyperbola if a times c is less than 0. That means either the a or the c would be negative, and we have the subtraction for the hyperbola. So let's classify. Here's the a and the c. So a times c is 20, which is greater than 0. Therefore, it is an ellipse. Here's the a. Wait, there's no y squared. Since there's no y squared, c is 0. So we'll have 2 times 0 is 0, which makes it a parabola. This one, both the a and the c are 7s. Therefore, a equals c, and it is a circle. And for the last one, here's the a, there's the c. So a times c is negative 20, which is less than 0, which means it is a hyperbola.